So let's talk about public safety. All of us are concerned about that. Every one of us want to feel safe where we live, where we work, when we're out and about. We want to feel like the things that we own are safe, that we're not at risk of losing them, we're not at risk of being physically harmed, or worse, even lose our life. What we've witnessed in the past couple of years is dramatic increases in crime in Colorado. We're now number one in the country for car theft. So number one in the country for car theft. We have thousands of cars stolen in Colorado every year. We're number two in the country for theft of property. So that would entail shoplifting, burglary, robbery, etc. But we're number two in the country. You know, there's things we'd like to be number one or number two in. Those aren't the things we want, number one or number two. Also in Colorado, our murder rate's up 32% in the last year. And it climbed over prior years, the year before that. We had gone through, for those who have lived in Colorado for a while, you remember the summer of violence in the mid-90s. Well, those summers of violence, through effective police work, that rate of violence and violent crime dropped dramatically. We're now seeing a significant rise in violent crime. And that's something that should appropriately frighten all of us, and something that tragically affects too many of us. So there's a couple of things that we need to recognize that we cause and that we need to do differently. This whole notion of defund the police, or even its first cousin, which is identifying our law enforcement personnel as problems in our society. As for me personally, I respect and appreciate anyone who chooses a career in law enforcement. I don't know how many of you have been called out by an alarm on a commercial building at 2 o'clock in the morning, where you might have an incursion into the building and you're the person who responds to that alarm. You get to your building, and what are you greeted by? One or two police officers who are there with you to walk the property, find out what happened, confront whatever the problem is if it's still there. On every one of those occasions, I am so grateful for our law enforcement personnel who risk their lives, frankly, every day they put the uniform on and go out to work. Well, we've moved a long way from respect and appreciation societally for our law enforcement personnel. So I think we need to start there. We need to start by making sure that people who choose that career know that we societally appreciate them, that we recognize that they've made an important choice relative to our society. We need to support them in the jobs that they do. And we've seen, just in the last 2 years, significant departures from law enforcement careers. And one of the reasons is this notion that they're not appreciated, they are considered problems in our society, and so on. Our legislature 2 years ago, with Democrats exclusively supporting this, took away qualified immunity from police officers. What qualified immunity means is this: if a police officer's in a situation with someone, if that person sues the police officer directly, the police officer has qualified immunity. Now, I'm not saying that police never make mistakes. They do a really, really hard job, and I would tell you the vast majority of the time they do a really, really good job. We certainly want to make sure that we're doing the best we can in police work. We want to make sure that our police officers are well trained. We need to make sure that they're held accountable when they do things that are inappropriate, incorrect, and bad. But when we take away qualified immunity for all police officers, we made a career in law enforcement far less attractive than it was. We increased the risks dramatically to those serving in law enforcement. Our law enforcement personnel, none of them get rich serving in that capacity. For them to be exposed to financial reversals as a result of having non-qualified immunity has resulted in, again, large numbers of police across our state leaving the career. And oftentimes we're losing our best police officers as a result of that action taken by the legislature 2 years ago. We need to reverse that. We need to restore qualified immunity for our police officers. We've witnessed some cities in Colorado who, when the state took away qualified immunity, basically said, well, if the state's going to take that away, we're not going to lose our police officers, so we'll indemnify our police officers in the case where legal challenges are brought against them in the conduct of their job. And they have then communicated to police officers that, hey, come here, we appreciate you, we protect you, we have your back. And police officers have been migrating to those cities and towns, leaving residents more vulnerable in the areas that those police officers who relocated vacated. So we need to deal with that really misguided piece of legislation that was done in 2020 and has had a significant impact on our police officers. Might have been done in 2021. We have a fentanyl epidemic in Colorado. Fentanyl is a deadly opiate. The raw materials for fentanyl are typically fabricated in China. They're sent to Mexico. They are then produced into opiate-looking pills. They come across the border into the United States. They've been flooding into Colorado. It's a dangerous, dangerous drug. We need to stop the flood of fentanyl coming into our state. We need to punish dealers of fentanyl. We need to get that drug off the streets. It's caused the deaths of so many promising young people and harmed many, many others. It's an epidemic for us, and we've got to deal with that. It's not something that we can take lightly. It's a major problem. It's a major problem right now. We need to move aggressively against that.